Hello, welcome to Her Journey Home. I'm your host, Sophia Noel Graniella. My mission here is simple: to hold space for honest stories and conversations that are usually left unsaid. This podcast is for the women in seasons of becoming, rebuilding their lives, reclaiming their voice, and remembering who they were before the world told them who to be. So come as you are, and let's begin the journey home together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Her Journey Home Season 2. I have another incredible guest on the podcast today. I am super excited to introduce you all to her because I know that this conversation is going to hit home for so many of you that have ever been in a relationship, or for the women that may have an anxious attachment style like I did for most of my life. So welcome, Samantha. She is an attachment trauma therapist and a relationship coach.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on Her Journey Home. I feel so honored to be here. I've listened for so long to this podcast and I'm just so excited to be here. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited as well. And I feel like I haven't had too many deep conversations about relationships in general, but especially around attachment styles. So I'm really excited to bring the listeners a really good deep dive into this because I know it is your expertise.
Yep, it sure is.
Beautiful. So obviously, we know a little bit that you're obviously a trauma therapist for relationships and you work around attachment styles. But
hmm
for anybody listening to the podcast today, if they're like, I don't really know what this means, or I don't know what my attachment style is, can you just break it down in simpler terms, like in a way that really clicks for the audience? Like, what are these attachment styles?
Absolutely. In the most basic and simplest of terms of how I can describe attachment styles, it's how we relate and connect to others. And we all have one. We all have an attachment style and they're not fixed. So they are more of a conditioning, if you will. We've been conditioned with a certain attachment style depending on how we related and connected with our primary caregiver. It's mostly the mother figure, but it can also come from the father figure as well. It depends on how the child views both parents. And then what we do is we take that conditioning and we bring it then into our adult relationships, because as adults, we then form primary attachments with other adults, other partners. And we don't necessarily see the attachment style coming out, if you will, when we're single. It's laying dormant. But then when we get into dating, when we start to really like someone, getting to that relationship, that's when our attachment style really comes out with a vengeance. And it came from the work of John Bowlby. He primarily came up with 3 attachment styles, and that is anxious attachment, avoidant attachment, and fearful avoidant attachment. And then Mary Ainsworth took over his work in the 1970s because she identified there was a small cohort of the population that didn't fit into either of those boxes. And she came up with the fearful avoidant attachment, the disorganized. And this is basically both anxious and avoidant attachment. So to break down each of these attachment styles really quickly and simply, otherwise we'd be here all day because I literally can talk about this all day. I relate to the anxious attachment, as have you as well, like you've shared. So a lot of people think that anxious attachment are primarily women, but actually that's not true. In my work, I have met plenty of anxiously attached men. And I was even at a festival the other day and he said, do you know, I think all women are avoidant. I was like, that's so
Wow.
interesting because I'm usually around women that are more anxiously attached and men that are avoidantly attached. So anxious and avoidant individuals are very attracted to each other. And we can go into the whys if you would like, but just to break down all of the attachment style, the anxious primarily have a fear of abandonment. So they go into relationships thinking that this person will leave them one day, that they have to prove themselves in order to earn that love, in order to please them. They self-sacrifice. They put other people's needs before their own. They see other people as superior to them in relationships. Even if it's not on a conscious level, it might sound ridiculous that you do that. But subconsciously, when you look at the behavior patterns, that's what's happening. And then the avoidantly attached individuals, they have a fear of intimacy. So they are afraid of being vulnerable because they believe that if they are vulnerable, they will end up getting hurt and rejected. So the anxious and the avoidant pretty much have the same type of childhood. And where these attachment styles come from is when their needs were not consistently met by their parents. So for a securely attached individual, when they would cry out, the parent would come, the parent would soothe them. And through the soothing and the presence of the parent, consistent presence and soothing, that securely attached individual will learn how to soothe themselves and be able to relate in a secure and healthy manner. But for the anxious and the avoidant, it was not consistently met in terms of their needs and the presence that they needed. So as children, they learned either that they have to earn love because love is being withdrawn when I'm being bad, or that love will eventually abandon me, or that is for the avoidant, it's scary to show emotions. I'm going to be punished. I'm going to be rejected. I'm a bad person, etc.
Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. And I had full body chills when you were talking about the anxious attachment and having to earn love, because that was most of my childhood, especially with my father. And I really hope for whoever's listening that really clears everything up if you're curious about, like, okay, which attachment style am I? And now that everyone's a little bit more clear on that, I would love to know what even brought you to this work, because I know we all have a really beautiful individual journey that has gotten us to our higher calling. What has your journey been like in discovering your own attachment style, and what has brought you here?
I worked with attachment styles primarily in a parent and child manner because I have a social work background. But then I became more interested and intrigued about how attachment styles operate in adult relationships when I went through my own personal journey. So I got into an 8-year relationship that at the start was fine, and then it got to become a little bit more abusive. I didn't know this while I was in it, but upon reflection and really looking at how the relationship dynamic was unfolding between us, when I look back, I was chronically anxiously attached. And what I remember is I was absolutely besotted with this person. And at first I thought it's puppy love, right? I'm 15 years old. A lot of people say that. It's puppy love. They'll grow out of it. But I didn't. I was obsessed with this person to the point where I felt like I couldn't live without them. Now, when we see media and movies and songs, we tend to romanticize this. And we are hopeless romantics naturally, as anxiously attached individuals. We love love and we love to be in love. And when we're not in love, we feel a little bit incomplete. So I was so in love and I was obsessed with this person. I would do anything for them. So the things that I would do, I lost all my friends. So I was at a very crucial age, really, 15, 16, 17, 18. I didn't want to hang out with my friends because in my mind back then, it took me away from him. So if my friends wanted to hang out, it was like an inconvenience. And when I would hang out with them, I couldn't rest. I was so anxious about what my partner was doing. Who was he with? What was he doing? And I couldn't relax unless I was with him or unless I was hearing from him. And this became a pattern. What I observed in the next couple of relationships after that as well was this anxiety that I was so afraid that this person was going to leave me, that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't even worthy of having them in my life. And my perception of myself was so low. But what was interesting was I didn't feel this when I was single. When I was single, I was confident. I liked myself. I got on with my life. I was successful with my career and all of that. But then when I was dating someone I really liked, it just all went out the window. And that is the most disturbing thing that I've recognized both in myself and my clients is how much of a shift that is. That's when we feel like we lose ourselves, when we hear this term like you've lost yourself. That's what it means to you've just completely abandoned who you are, your boundaries, your needs, your values. You would do anything to keep this person. And in my journey and in my work, I've come up with 4 different types of attachment style girlies. And I've been all 4. So we have the butterfly, and that the butterfly girlie, she can't be single. She needs to find her partner, and she's almost like on a ticking time bomb. She's like, oh my God, because we know a butterfly only lives for 3 days. So it's like, I have to find my partner. I have to find them. I'm so incomplete without them. And they're just frantic, flapping their wings everywhere. And then we have the kangaroo girlie. She's hopping from relationship to relationship because, again, she cannot be alone. So she's attracting the same type of partner, just with a different face. So it's the same type of relationship. And then we have the chameleon girls. Our chameleon girls are the ones who mold themselves into anything their partner wants them to be. And I've seen this in my own journey. With that 8-year relationship, he was obsessed with F1 racing. And what did I do? Yeah, I like F1 racing too, but I pretended to like it because I wanted to be the perfect partner for him. And then the fourth anxiously attached girly we have is the mama bear. I noticed this in myself in the next serious relationship I was in, where because I was quite traumatized from that previous relationship and I hadn't done the work at that point, and I was still understanding attachment styles, I wanted to control the relationship as much as possible. I controlled him, where he went and who with. I put him in the feminine role and then I shamed him for it. I was like, stand up and be a man and grow a pair of balls, will you? Like, you don't do this around that. You don't do that. You don't do this. And the nagging started to come. But what I realized, I wasn't creating the space for him to do that because I was trying to control everything. And then through my journey, through a lot of self-compassion and a lot of self-forgiveness and understanding why I wanted to be in control was because I was so afraid of losing him.
Oh my gosh. Can I just say this is so fucking good? The way that you explained all of the girls, I see myself in every single one of those in various relationships throughout my life until I finally took the time to be single and fall back in love with myself and date myself. And I know that everyone listening is probably like, oh, yep, I was a butterfly or I was a kangaroo. Like, wow, so amazing to explain it that way. And I'm really curious, was there a turning point in your journey, like in one of your relationships or maybe an experience that you had where all of a sudden something clicked and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to go on my healing journey. I need to heal this anxious attachment.
This is quite an interesting story, actually, because my turning point was that second serious relationship that I was in. Again, just so in love. We moved very fast. We met once. I met him here in Thailand. I live in Thailand. And I was about to leave Thailand to go to Australia. And I met him on the last night, the very last night that I was in Thailand. And we met and I thought nothing of it. I thought nothing of it. I'm leaving Thailand. But we kept in touch and we, over the phone and over messages, started to really like each other. And he invited me to stay with him for 3 months in Nepal. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Because at this point, I'm like falling in love with the dude, or at least what I thought, because we think we're falling in love at those beginning stages. But what's really happening is our attachment is being activated. And we're excited and we're fantasizing and we're just in our love bubble that nothing else matters. Thankfully, it worked out. I was like, this could go so wrong. But thankfully, it worked out. And we went to Nepal, and those 3 months were absolutely magical. And we didn't end up falling in like proper love. When we started to get to know each other, moved back to Thailand, and I moved it into his family home immediately. So it was very, very fast. And what a lot of us do is that we mistake intensity for intimacy. So we feel like we know this person really well and that they're the love of our lives. And who were we without this person? What was our life even about without this person in our lives? That's exactly what I fell into. And again, I noticed that I was falling into the same patterns, but I also adopted those new ones, like the control, because the first relationship, I was very dependent on him to meet my needs, to soothe my emotions. Like I just couldn't be without him. And then it was interesting what I observed in the second relationship was that I tried to control everything and adapt him to me. And I would cause drama because I would say that he was primarily secure. He did have a slither of avoidance in him, but it wasn't to the extreme that I've also experienced. So I would cause drama in this relationship because that's all I understood. I grew up with a very hostile environment with my parents screaming and shouting at each other. And I thought that's how I'm supposed to communicate. So I start screaming and bawling and shouting at him. And he's looking at me like, what's happening right now? Like, why are you shouting at me? Can you just lower your voice and talk to me like decent human being? Where's the respect here? And that triggered me. So it was a load of that. And that went on for about 2 years. And unfortunately, he ended the relationship because it's almost like he couldn't take it anymore. And he really tried. And I was so heartbroken. And I went on a retreat immediately, went on a yoga retreat because I couldn't bear this pain. It was so painful. And I had to leave the family home. I just couldn't be there. And it was on this retreat that I started to realize that I had lost the love of my life. And this is the story that I was telling myself for so long. I have lost the love of my life, and this is my fault. And the blame and shame that I put on myself was horrific. But it did end up having that silver lining because it got me into gear. I was like, right, I refuse to let this happen again. This is so painful. I need to understand what's going on. I knew about attachment styles from my previous work as a social worker, but like I said, I really dived into the trauma aspect of it, of how we're carrying this trauma from childhood and how it's sabotaging our relationships. So I did the therapy, I read all the books, and I went into another little incident where I was in an infatuation with a guy. And that's a whole different story where I completely abandoned myself. And that was my second turning point where I'm like, what is happening? I can't live my life this way. And then COVID hit, or just before COVID, and I spent so much time by myself just unpacking everything. It was painful, it was uncomfortable, but I had already was so heartbroken. And these were the two turning points that I had went through. And I was so determined to understand myself. There was a slight over intellectualizing everything because I'm a bit of a type A girly. So I over intellectualize everything and I get obsessed with all the information. But slowly but surely, I started to implement the work that I am now doing with my clients. I have taken everything that I've learned and I've created my own method. And it's through this method that I support other people to become securely attached. So now I'm happy to say that I'm earned secure attachment because there is a difference between conditioned secure and earned secure. What earned secure means is that we still need to leave a little bit of room and compassion and understanding for the way that we have been conditioned. Because at first I thought that we could completely erase it, fix it, if you will, and change it. But actually, it's a little bit more like scribbling it out and writing on top. So this is actually a really beautiful thing because every time that we are triggered and we do see maybe remnants of old wounds and beliefs coming up, it just gives us that invitation because now we have the capacity, now we have the tools to go there, to hold ourselves to go there. And every time I get a little bit triggered or something comes up, of course, it's so uncomfortable, but there is this part of me that gets quite excited because now I know I'm going deeper with myself and I'm going further. So yeah, that's my journey.
Thank you so much for going deep with us and being vulnerable. I think it helps a lot of women connect to their own past experiences. But I heard you say like you took a lot of time alone and just sitting and it was uncomfortable and there was a lot of challenges. And I know for me, after being in so many just toxic, anxiously attached relationships that left me so broken, I needed a year, 2 years. Now I'm going on 2.5 years single. And it's been the best years of my life because I was able to reconnect with myself and to heal a lot of those parts of me and to just get clear on like what it is that I actually desire moving forward. And so I would love to know, like you said, you spent a lot of time alone, you did therapy, you did other things. What really, really helped you to heal this anxious attachment?
I remember that period of time where I chose to be alone, but there was still this part of me, my inner child wanted a boyfriend, wanted to be held, wanted to be loved because I still hadn't really learned how to access that in myself. I remember going on a date and I was like, what am I doing? It just felt so off. It felt so icky. And my inner child was fully in control here, like falling into those patterns. And I think that was when I really made the decision to not date until I felt confident was the word that was coming to me back then. I want to feel confident in myself. I want to like and love myself. So I'm not worried about whether they like me. What's more important is that I like me and I'm sticking true to myself. So some of the modalities that really helped me that I now use in my work, I think the first one was subconscious reprogramming. So I went straight to the mind I was like, okay, I want to reprogram the beliefs that I have about myself. And I discovered through that I was holding major, major wounds around abandonment, but also exclusion and rejection. And it's not just from our parental upbringing. Maybe there's some listeners right now who's like, but I had a great childhood. On the surface, so did I. But when we dive a little bit deeper, as adults, we don't seem to think that these things mattered. But as a child, when you are a child, the way that you observe and take in the world, it's very delicate. So we make meaning out of everything. So if your mother is stressed and she just couldn't show up for you that night when you're wanting attention, and she's like, oh, please just leave me alone tonight. I need some space. Can you just go play with your brother? I just can't deal with you right now. We seem to think that's quite innocent. But as a child, what I'm observing and what I'm making that mean is I'm not good enough for you to spend time with me. You don't love me. I'm being rejected right now, and I'm not getting my attention needs met. So it was through the subconscious reprogramming that I was starting to realize where these wounds and beliefs were forming. And it doesn't mean that you now have to have this full understanding of your childhood and you need to do like regression work or anything like that. We don't need to re-traumatize ourselves. But for me, what helped was understanding where it actually came from. So that was step one, just really understanding so I can start to have compassion for myself, for my parents, and figure out what beliefs I'm working with. And I was working with, I'm not enough and I'm not worthy. So then I remember setting myself a challenge because I wanted to reprogram this worthiness wound because it was leaking into every area of my life, my career, my friendships, the way I related to myself. I remember like not cooking myself nice meals or wearing nice clothes or wearing perfume unless I was doing it for someone else. And I was like, no, I need to date myself. I need to love myself. What does it mean to love myself? So I used food as a way to reprogram my worthiness wound. I would make it a whole ritual, planning my meals, shopping for the ingredients before I would choose the cheapest crap. Like, oh, I'll just get the value butter or the value cheese, whatever it is. No, I was like, I'm worthy of really good cheese. I'm worthy of really nice chocolate, whatever it is. And I repeated this over and over and over and over and over to myself. I am worthy. I am worthy. I am worthy. We go too much in the direction of trying to reprogram these wounds in relationships. And I think that's why it's important that we have space for ourselves first. Because if we're going in trying to reprogram that wound in our relationship, we're too triggered. It's too high risk. You're still dealing with that abandonment that they're going to leave. So I think that's why it was important for me to be by myself so I can feel worthy in myself, to have a really nice meal cooked by myself, to wear really nice clothes just for me. So that was the first one. And I think then what really supported that was doing inner child work, learning what that meant, sitting with my inner child, reparenting myself, showing up for myself in the way that I needed my mother to show up for me when I was a child. She did the best she could, and she was parenting us for the way that she was being parented. And I was like, I need to break the cycle here and reparent myself in a different way. So I did the inner child work, and that's what it pretty much means, is meeting your own needs, understanding what you're needing when you're feeling a certain way and being able to meet that need. And then boundaries as well. What are the boundaries? Learning about your boundaries, sticking to this is such a massive one. Learning about boundaries. Learning how to communicate without yelling and screaming at someone was really helpful as well. Like learning actual skills to relate to people authentically, honestly, vulnerably. And then the last modality that I learned, which I think is the most important one, and I put on number one now of my method, is somatic therapy. So I've got my master's in somatic therapy now. That's how important I believe that it is, because I was so much operating from the mind. And I thought if I could change my mind, I could change my life, all those cliche things that we hear all the time. But actually, the trauma that we're carrying from childhood, whether it's the big T trauma or the little t, it's stored in the body. So you can't think your way out of feeling. It's because I was trying to think myself out of feeling a certain way when I'm on a date or I'm in a relationship, but I had to feel it. And that's so uncomfortable. And a lot of people, myself included, for so long did not want to feel. We just stuff it down because we want to be positive and we want to be okay. But when we give ourselves the permission to somatically work with our body, connect with our body, that is when everything exploded onto a different level for me.
Oh my goodness. Wow. I resonate with just so much of everything that you're saying, and especially that somatic piece, because I overanalyze things as well, especially when I was in all those relationships. It was, oh, I can just think my way out of this and everything will be fine. But I was avoiding feeling, and I was drinking, and I was numbing, and I was doing anything I could to just be okay and to feel okay. And so that really leads me beautifully into the next question of, tell us a bit more about this method you've created, because I know you have your master's in somatics, and I know it's the first step of your method, which I think is so beautiful and so necessary for women that are healing their anxious attachment styles.
Yeah, so I've got the secure method, and it really just blends in all of the modalities that I work with, and they all stand for something different. So the word secure, and S stands for somatics. Like I said, this is number one, understanding our body. A lot of us are disconnected from our body, not through our own fault, but because we just were not taught how to connect with our body, especially as women. We weren't taught how to feel. You know, when we cried, we were told to shut up. When we got angry, we were told that's not okay. Like, good girls don't get angry. You're not allowed to have a temper tantrum. So we've been shamed for so long for expressing our emotions that we've shut ourselves off from feeling. So that is absolutely number one, is starting to understand how your body works and starting to befriend your nervous system. Because when we are anxious in our relationships or avoidant, we tend to go into the fight, flight, or freeze state responses. And this is when we react and we say things we don't mean and we do things we don't mean. It's because we are in our hyper arousal state. So I always go through quite a few somatic tools with my clients so they can start to see that their emotions are not scary, that their emotions are not going to be forever. We are just riding out the storm, and then the storm then becomes a wave, and they expand their capacity to be able to hold their emotions, to be able to move them through, because emotions are energy in motion. If we don't move our emotions through, if we don't process them, if we don't befriend them or understand them, we stuff them down. And then we get triggered and it comes back up like a boiling kettle. We just don't know how to communicate how we're feeling. We don't know how to feel how we're feeling. So we brush it under the rug. And sooner rather than later, that hump will be very difficult to ignore. And we'll be tripping over it, and it'll be exploding, and it'll be leaking into everything. Just giving the tools to understand and move emotions through in and of itself is probably the most powerful thing that I can do for somebody. And then the E stands for energetics. So this is now starting to change your energy in the way that we're dating, because a lot of my clients, they come to me through breakups, but I also work with a lot of people that when we're doing our understanding our anxious attachment is understanding the energy that we're putting out there in the world. Because when we are going on dates or we're in relationships, we tend to get a little bit clingy. We tend to get a little bit needy. So it's like, how can we reclaim our energy? What is the energy that we are presenting ourselves with? And this is, to be honest, a natural way of how we then come from the somatic work, because our energy will start to shift in a natural way. We're just becoming conscious of it. The C stands for subconscious reprogramming. So working with the conscious mind, working with the cognitive. So before it was bottom up, and now we're going top to bottom. So we're bringing the mind into the soul and the body work. This is when, like I said, we'll start to look at the beliefs and the wounds that are hiding in our subconscious, that are in the driver's seat of our lives. Because the simplest way that I can describe how our subconscious mind works is a little bit like when we're wearing spectacles, and we're all wearing different spectacles, and this is how we see the world. So your spectacles, Sophia, are very different to my spectacles, and those spectacles are made up of our conditioning. So that means how we were parented, what we heard, what we saw, what we experienced as children. And this isn't just in the childhood home, this can be in schools, within our friendship groups, what we see on the TV. Like, children are sponges, and this is what we are molded to be. So those are the spectacles that we wear, and we're wearing them, and this is how we see the world. So it's about cleaning those spectacles, cleaning them up. Let's clean up all those limiting beliefs that are holding you back and sabotaging your relationships. So that's the C. U stands for unlocking the inner child. So I described what that looks like, just really starting to befriend your inner child and reparenting work. R stands for reclaiming boundaries. So this is the boundary work that we do. And then E is for expressive communication. So this is the communicative skills that I was talking about. So it's a combination of the deep therapeutic work of going into the psyche, of going into the body, going into the soul. And then we go into more of the embodiment work. And this is why I blend the therapy and the coaching. This is where I'm like, okay, now that we've gone into those dark spots together, we've turned the light on, we know what we're dealing with now. Now we can work on developing the skills so you can authentically and securely relate with others. A lot of people get it wrong and they try to learn how to communicate and how to do boundaries, which is great. Like, this is great. However, if we're learning how to communicate and set boundaries, but we haven't dealt with this worthiness wound or abandonment wound, we're going to get really frustrated that we can't stick to our boundaries because we haven't dealt with that abandoned inner child within who doesn't really give a crap about your boundaries. All she wants is to be loved and chosen. So that in a blend is my secure method.
Wow, what a powerful method. I wish when you were saying everything, I'm like, I wish that I had met her years ago when I got out of my relationship and I was so heartbroken because every single one of those parts is so important and they all tie together so beautifully. And I also love that you brought up the worthiness wound because that was one that I had to work through for a long time. I still work on it to this day. And when I was feeling like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, not only was it affecting my relationships and my friendships, it was affecting every single area of my life. And so the fact that you address that as well is so important. And that really brings up another question for me. If someone's listening right now and she's like, okay, whoa, after all this explanation, this conversation, now I know I'm anxiously attached. Like maybe I'm in a relationship right now where I'm anxiously attached and they're my whole world. Or maybe I just got out of a breakup and I'm really heartbroken. What is one really tangible step that you can give that woman today that she can take to just start to maybe sit with herself or to start to heal this anxious attachment?
I just want to say that everybody is really unique. And this is the complexity of working with attachment trauma is that, yeah, we can really resonate with the patterns and the wounds and the beliefs. And I think that really gives us a sense of feeling seen and heard and a feeling that we're not alone. Based on that, I feel like one of the biggest behavioral patterns that I observe in someone who's just finding out that they're anxiously attached and can observe the self-abandonment happening and maybe they have broken their boundaries. They've said yes to something that they didn't want to. Like there's a lot of shame that tends to come up for us when we're just starting our journey. We're like, oh my God, how did I allow that to happen? How did I allow this person to treat me this way for so long? If they're going through a breakup or if they're in a relationship, it's like, why am I allowing this to happen? Or I've lost all my friends, or I have done that. And all the shame will start to come up to the surface. So I think honestly, the first thing that I would love to invite anyone in to doing if they are in this space is to just really lean into compassion right now. And like I said, the way that worked for me on doing that is just understanding why I am the way I am right now, why I behave that way, because it's not who we are. It's not our identity. Like I said, this can shift. That anxious attachment that you observe in yourself is not who you are. It is not the be all and end all of you as a human being. You are a worthy human being by your right, and you deserve love and to be loved, first of all, by yourself. That is where we need to start. And by being compassionate to our whole self for why we did this and why we did that. So maybe just go to a therapy session or go into something like what I offer to really start to unpack the patterns and the wounds and the beliefs. And that will lead you into that compassion element of like, okay, this is not who I am, and this doesn't have to be this way. But how can I just sit with myself right now? Maybe forgiveness is a word that doesn't come, but it will. The more that you sit with those patterns and behaviors that you've observed in yourself, you're like, okay, what does it mean to really love myself? And that means to forgive myself and to make a different choice. And also to just give yourself space and understanding that nothing is going to be perfect. You probably will relapse in some way, like I did many, many, many times in my journey. And that is what learning is all about. When we're learning a new skill, because that's what it is, we're learning to relate differently. We need to treat it as such. So it's about being consistent with yourself, making that commitment, remembering why you're making that commitment, and confidence will come from that. A lot of us wait to feel confident, but confidence will come. Another really important element of my journey was community. I feel like that's the 3 C's right there: consistency, commitment, and community. Community is everything. And being around other women that understood, because I don't know about you, Sophia, but my friends didn't really get it. They were like, I feel like I just need to put you in a box and sit on the box because you keep going back to him, blah, 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 blah. They just didn't get it. And instead they contributed to the shame. My family didn't get it. And I'm British. So it's like, oh, for goodness sake, man, just get over it already. Like just get with someone else. You'll be fine. So by being in community with sisters and even men later down the line, but I really needed to be around women that got it, that could see me and understand me and hear me, and I wasn't alone, because we're not alone. So many of us have an anxious attachment style, but we're so afraid to talk about it because we feel like we're the only one. We feel like a little child. We feel childish. We feel shameful. So start talking about it. And I promise you will have someone in your life that feels the same way.
Absolutely. Oof. Oh my goodness. I hope that everyone listening grabs a journal and goes back through this episode a few times because there's so much gold. And you said so many important parts, but compassion is so important. And I always say this, but if you've been spending 15, 20 years in anxious attachment, give yourself time to heal this. Give yourself that compassion. Be gentle with yourself. We're human. And like you said, confidence comes with time. Like you said, learning a new language. I love that analogy because it really is. It's like you're going to fall down, you're going to make mistakes, you might relapse a couple of times. Give yourself that love and compassion because it takes time. Like you learned this and you were in these patterns for so many years. So allow yourself that space and give yourself that time, please. And community is everything. I'm so glad you touched on that because for me, it was the same. I was drowning in so much shame, blaming myself for why my last relationship ended, feeling like, oh my gosh, how did I do this? Why was I this way? And like you said, my friends a lot of times added to the shame. They're like, how are you still with him? He's toxic. Why do you keep going back? They didn't get it. And so for me, it was like every time I would go back, it would just fuel the shame. And it was just this never ending pattern that I couldn't seem to break free from until I actually was single and I sat with myself and I went to therapy and I got a mentor. And so for anyone listening, go and talk to Sam, right? Like go and talk to her and go and get a therapist or find community or talk to someone in your life that you deeply trust and you resonate with because truly, it is everything. And you do not have to suffer in silence. You do not have to go on this journey by yourself. And I guess another thing that I'm really curious about for the women listening, because I know, like you said, we identify with this sometimes. We're like, oh, we're just anxiously attached. It's just who I am, right? Without sometimes even knowing we're anxiously attached. So we're just like, nope, this is just me. I would love to know, like, what is one of the best or biggest transformations you've seen in one of your clients so that we can give the listeners this proof and this concept of like, okay, this is also possible for me to heal.
I think I'm going to share one of my recent women because it was just an absolutely phenomenal journey that she went on. She came to me and she was stuck in a 3-year incredibly toxic relationship. She was trauma bonded. What it actually means is like your trauma is keeping you stuck in that relationship and you cannot break free no matter how hard you try because everything in your body is screaming at you to go back to this person. And I experienced this in my first relationship. So I think this is why I hold this particular woman dear to my heart. And when she came to me, she couldn't stop crying. She's like, please help me. I can't live like this. She wasn't suicidal, but she was like, I cannot live like this. This is killing me. Like this anxiousness, this unworthiness. She had such a low perception of herself. And when I observed her, because I'm very sensitive to energies, she was like a a crippled shell. She was, and I don't like to use this word broken, but it was this analogy of all these broken pieces because she had been in this relationship that had broken her, emotionally abused her to the point where she felt so disgusted in herself. She couldn't even look in the mirror. That's what we were dealing with. I'm like, right. Yeah, I resonate with this. I remember like crying after our first session because it took me back. It took me back to when I was in that space. So we started our work together. But what was different about her was she was, what can I say? She had those like two C's, the commitment and she was so committed. She was like, I'm so committed to doing this. And that's not to shame anyone who's not ready, but sometimes, and I've seen this in my own journey as well, we have to be pushed to the edge of the cliff in order to start making those changes. So it was almost like she had to stay with this man for 3 years in order to realize that actually the power is within her. She makes the choice. She makes the change. It starts with her. And when you realize that, that is when everything starts to open up for you. So after one session, we've connected with her inner child, and it was so powerful. Like so much was released emotionally from her because we did that somatic part, but we brought the inner child in, and I had her do this particular exercise, and that is to write to her child self. So she wrote a letter to her child self, and she says in her words that particular exercise that I had her do broke everything open, and it was almost like the rose tinted glasses fell off and the bubble was burst. And the next session, she said to me, I've walked out of the relationship, I've blocked him, I've deleted him, and I've done it. But she keeps saying I couldn't have done it by myself. It was because she had myself. She had this one person who was in the mud with her. And she's like, I feel strong enough to do this now because I've got you holding my hand. And it gives me full body goosebumps because it just reminds me every time I talk about this, the power of the work that I do. And we work together for 4 months. My one-on-one program is 4 months long. And this is so we can get through everything and make sure that we have dug everything up. I've even recorded a podcast episode with this particular woman. So if anybody really wants to deep dive into her journey, it is there. But you will hear in her voice how confident she sounds. She is so happy now. She's so happy. She has got 2 little girls as well. So she has almost like reconnected to them because unfortunately, we don't only abandon ourselves and our needs, we can sometimes abandon the needs of our children as well when the attachment style is so strong. So she had to work on those relationships, and she just rebuilt her confidence from the ground up. Like I said, the podcast episode is there if you want to hear the intricate details, but she has now found a new partner who absolutely loves her in the way that she knows she deserves to be loved. She's reconnected to all her friends. She's got a promotion in her work because she is shining. And she will say on the podcast episode, like, her life has completely changed. Like, she looks at herself in the mirror now and she just smiles from ear to ear. And it is as little as 4 months. Was an absolute incredible honor to be with her on that journey. So I would love to invite your listeners to listen to her story because it really is the most powerful journeys that I have been on as a therapist.
Wow, I had full body goosebumps. And when you were sharing her story, I also got emotional because I felt myself a couple years ago. For anyone listening, if you're heartbroken, if you're navigating something really difficult, get into Samantha's program. Like 4 months, deep dive. You heard her method and how this client's life has truly changed. Like attracting a beautiful partner, getting a promotion, like things that you can't even imagine in 4 months. So I will link that episode in the show notes because I think that every single listener needs to dive into that.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing before I dive into that. The really important part in regards to like her finding this new partner, the thing that we need to take into account is she wasn't looking for it. That was not her goal. A lot of us think that's the goal, is to find the man and to get the ring, whatever it is. But actually the man, the partner, the whatever you're looking for is a bonus. So when I observed this particular client, she found herself in the most beautiful way. So I didn't have to work for it. He just appeared in my life. And that's what I've observed in my own life as well, that when we are leading the most authentic life that it's true to us, things just come. I also have my one-on-one program, which is my bread and butter. It's my signature. Honestly, if you want the fastest and the most transformational results. One-on-one really is the best option. We are all unique in our attachment styles and our systems and our childhood beliefs and wounds. So when you're able to give yourself that intimate space, that's when the power really happens.
Beautiful. Yes. And I will link every single thing in the show notes below, but definitely go follow her on Instagram and just reach out to her if you're interested and you're ready to heal your anxious attachment because it quite literally changes your life. And I know it's changed both of our lives. So take it from us. Go listen to that podcast episode. And I like to wrap every single episode up with the same question. But what is one powerful message that you want every single listener to walk away with today?
That it starts with you, that when we start taking accountability for ourselves, and I know that sounds scary. Oh my God, like I'd rather not, because that's the easy option, right? Is to not face ourselves and to realize that we do have a lot of control. We're all looking for control outside of ourselves, but it's the ironic thing that we get to reshape and redefine how we are being in this world, whether it is our relationships that we're working on, whether it is the career path that we're on, whether it's just wanting to travel the world and living in a different country. I have come from a space where I thought everything was out of my control and I had to follow a particular path, and this is just how it is. But when you do make that decision, and it really just does start with that decision to just start making a difference in your life. You don't have to do the big overhaul. Just start with one small change, whatever that is for you. And it could be as small as just spending more time outside. Because the more you build trust in yourself, the more you will build resilience, the more you will start to believe that you can do it, the more you will be connected with yourself. So, what I want people to know is to stop looking outside of yourself for the answers, for things to happen. Stop looking for that man to complete your life. Stop looking for that business to make you feel safe and fulfilled. Stop looking at external things because they're not permanent. They will come and go. I know a lot of us don't want to hear that, but that is life. Things will come and go. What is constant is you and the relationship that you have with you. So start with yourself, small steps.
Oh, what a beautiful, powerful message. I hope that every single woman just thoroughly listened and loved this conversation because truly it's something that I wish I had years ago when I got out of my last relationship. And I'm sending so much love to anybody who is listening, who is navigating a heartbreak or a difficult season of life. Just remember to be gentle with yourself as you're navigating this because it's a process.
That small step, I have a couple of freebies as well to get you started. Whether you're going through a breakup, I have the 7-day breakup detox checklist that will take you gently through a 7-day ritual to be able to start to detox and start to come to terms with the breakup that you may be going through. And I also have the ultimate guide to healing anxious attachment, which is a very similar step up. It's a very simple and gentle 7-day process to just get you started on this journey. So I can offer that as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Samantha, for being on Her Journey Home. I will link that freebie in the show notes as well, because I think that having a little ritual in your back pocket when you're navigating a heartbreak is so valuable. But this was honestly such a powerful conversation. I genuinely love talking to you. And I'm so honored to have you on Her Journey Home, truly.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really, really loved talking with you. You asked amazing questions and you are amazing. This podcast is amazing, as a lot of your listeners will know, but just thank you. So honored to be here, Sophia.
Thank you so much. And for anyone listening, please go ahead and share this episode with your community if you loved it. Subscribe and rate the podcast so I can continue coming back and having these incredible conversations with you all. And as always, I will see you for another episode next Thursday.